My name is Mario Martinez. Today, Dr. Conroy Reynolds and I come to you from the School of Education at the University of Redlands. We are going to discuss diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, from an individual and organizational perspective. Conroy and I have conducted many workshops, and the topic of DEI is especially meaningful to us given the School of Education's nearly 100-year history of commitment to community and diversity. The information in this sample workshop may seem basic to some and new to others, but our experience tells us it is useful for a group of people to go through the basics together, to explore differences but also find common ground. Let's begin with the story about Harvey Mudd College in Pomona, California. Harvey Mudd addressed a gender imbalance of women studying computer science with some action. Number 1, assume no difference in intelligence between genders, but acknowledge differences of experiences. Number 2, create a track of study for those with no programming experience. Number 3, encourage cooperation rather than competition among students. And number 4, fund trips to professional gatherings of women. In the end, women graduates in computer science increased from about 12% in 2006 to 48% a decade later. Harvey Mudd brought DEI principles to life. Not every effort is going to meet such success, but the story is a good launching point for us. Let's begin our workshop, which hopefully leads to a series of conversations or professional development experiences to strengthen DEI culture in your organization. Our 3 objectives for the workshop are simple but powerful. Conroy will facilitate the first exercise, but please pause the video to review the objectives as needed.
Many of us believe in DEI, but we have not formally defined what we mean by it. It is important for a team of people to discuss concepts that are important to its mission. For many of us in education and counseling-related fields, DEI is a critical component of who we are, so let's conduct an assessment using your own experiences and reflections. On a blank sheet of paper, make a vertical and intersecting horizontal line as you see on the screen. Label the upper left-hand quadrant as shown. Pause the video and write down words or phrases or attributes of an organization, but not your own, of course, that you're familiar with that has a strong DEI culture. Now that you've listed a few items describing a strong DEI culture, let's review what others, in our experience, commonly list. Organizations have a combination of visible, invisible, and philosophical DEI cultural attributes. Visible attributes might include a diverse faculty and staff. A visible attribute might be the unspoken understanding that everyone gets a chance to speak in a meeting, and a philosophy might be represented in a vision statement. As you look at your list, how does it compare to what we show here? Add any items you would like. In step 2, we will do a contrast. Contrasts are powerful. The contrast sour versus sweet, for example, leaves a strong impression. Label the right-hand quadrant as shown. Pause the video and describe an organization, not just your own, that you're familiar with that has a weak DEI culture. Now that you've listed a few items, let's review your answers. In a weak DEI culture, we might not see visible evidence of diversity and no DEI initiatives. Hiring processes likely do not account for candidates with diverse backgrounds. How does your list compare to what we show here? Add any items you would like. Let's now go to step 3, where we will get closer to home. Label the lower left quadrant as shown. How you define your organization largely depends on your position. A president or superintendent might define an organization as the entire institution or district. An advisor or counselor might define an organization as her advising or counseling office. Draw on descriptions from either of the upper quadrants to help you get started. Pause the screen and describe your organization's DEI culture. You may have found that your organization has strengths and weaknesses, something that is not unusual after doing such an exercise. This brings us to step 4, where you will assess your DEI philosophies, values, and actions. What activities are you involved in? What are your philosophies and values? Are they DEI related? Pause the screen and describe yourself.
We will revisit your 4-step assessment near the end of our workshop. For now, let's add some context to generate insights into what DEI is. Like us, you probably believe in the ideas of DEI, but how do we actually define important terms that anchor our beliefs? Look at the following terms on your screen. Note that we have added equality to the list. Pause the screen and write down a 1 or 2 sentence definition for each term. Let's start with diversity. Every individual brings a unique combination of characteristics to their personal and professional lives. Diversity exists along what experts term dimensions, such as personality, gender, race, ethnicity, income, religion, and occupation. Our individual dimensions add up to uniqueness and value. An indicator of a diverse organization, for example, is one whose faculty, staff, and students are racially and ethnically diverse. An indicator of an individual who values and lives diversity is an individual who interacts with diverse individuals, not just those similar to themselves. Let's go to equity. Equity pertains to resources and assistance that are based on a need or access to opportunity. It is about fairness. Distribution may not be the same for everyone. The equity-based federal student aid program for college students, called the Pell Grant program, gives more aid to students from low-income families, an equity-based program. Did your definition of equity have some similarities to the definition you saw on the screen? Inclusion is about belonging. People feel they belong when they feel they can participate in activities and that their voice matters. We all desire and welcome the opportunity to participate in important spaces. Think about your experience, for example, attending a staff meeting. Is a meeting dominated by an administrator, or does she provide an opportunity for each person to offer their thoughts and opinions? Equality is about sameness. Individual uniqueness or circumstances do not influence distribution of resources. In the School of Education at Redlands, for example, we are starting a program that offers telecounseling services to any student. The service is equally available to all. So, how are equality and equity different? Equity is about fairness. Equality is about sameness. Individual diversity dimensions might influence whether we address an issue using an equity or equality lens. Not all 3 people in the illustration can see the ball game using just the ground as a resource, due to differences in height or even the ability to stand. The solution in this case is to apply an equity lens. Some situations will require sameness, others fairness.
We now revisit the assessment I conducted with you in the first part of our workshop, using these definitions as a lens. Pause the video if you need to and review how you qualitatively described your organization and yourself. The first question is really asking to what extent diversity exists within your organization. For example, do students see themselves represented in the faculty, or do clients see themselves represented in their counselors? The second question asks about interactions with diverse individuals and groups who are outside of your immediate group. Do you personally seek interactions with people who are diverse and not part of what we might call your in-group? As you read the equity questions, look at how you described yourself and your organization. Does your organization distinguish between equity and equality? The inclusion questions are somewhat related to the diversity questions. However, They ask not just about interaction, but about the quality of those interactions. Do diverse others feel welcome and free? When everyone feels they have a voice, that is where we find quality interaction and an inclusive environment.
In our virtual time together, you have constructed a qualitative DEI assessment and reviewed DEI definitions as a lens for that assessment. Now, as you consider your qualitative assessments, what quantitative ratings would you assign to your organization and to yourself? Look at the top scale on the screen. Assign a rating from 1 to 7 for your organization and then for yourself on the bottom scale. Please pause the video to assign the ratings. Are your two ratings similar? If the ratings are different, did you rate yourself higher or lower than your organization? Take a moment and write down what you think your ratings mean. In general, individuals tend to rate themselves higher than their organizations. Psychologists have identified what is called the attribution error, which is a tendency to attribute success or strengths to ourselves, but challenges or problems to others. Similar ratings suggest alignment between how you see yourself and your organization. If you rated yourself lower, maybe you feel DEI is an area of growth for you. If you rated yourself higher, it may in fact be that your organization needs strengthening. In some cases, however, it may be that an individual overrates themselves and must find better alignment on DEI issues with the team.
We conclude with applications related to the learning that you just completed, starting with the exercise on the screen. As an example for this action item, perhaps you have good listening skills. That is a strength of inclusion. Putting the strength to practice might be inviting a colleague to lunch, someone who possesses different diversity dimensions than you. Please pause the video and write down a strength and an action step. The last application asks if there is something you can do to strengthen DEI in your organization. This might be as simple as asking your manager about DEI practice in the organization. Please pause the video and write down an action step. We hope you have enjoyed thinking about the importance of DEI in application-based ways. If you are interested in having a workshop or series on DEI at your location, please do reach out to us.